Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Hall. Reed should be here very, very soon. The Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. This episode is called Debrief Minicamp. So we're going to break down Minicamp, and we thought none other than bringing in big man Mitchell Tischler from Monumental Sports himself. How are you doing on this beautiful Monday evening? Well, it's not beautiful. It's cloudy. What?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
After the past week, I think we're used to all the darkness. But speaking of, I got to ask you about Minicamp because I want to break it down. But instead of going into details, my first question I have for you, have you seen any big differences between this Minicamp and previous ones?
Yeah, definitely the pace of camp, the pace of practice, the speed with which guys are moving both in drills and then also kind of in between drills, running from station to station to station. And I think that's the Eric Bieniemy effect. I mean, I think you can see how much of an influence he's had on this team already in the short period of time that he's here. Ron Rivera's talked about kind of letting him do his thing on offense, and Ron's kind of going to be the manager overall of everybody. And you can see it in practice, both in the noise level, in the vocalness of Eric Bieniemy, but also the speed and then the expectation that even though it's just minicamp and they're just in t-shirts and shorts, that they can that they're still moving around pretty fast.
Yeah, I found it intriguing. You talk about them running to the huddle and everything. Even the defense, you've seen a difference with that?
I mean, I think overall, just when one side amps it up a little bit, the other side does as well. And for the offensive coaches, there usually aren't too many offensive coaches that are vocal, especially an offensive coordinator. Right. Certainly, we haven't had one here in DC in the 15-16 years that I've covered the team. And so normally you hear those defensive coaches yelling, especially the DB coaches. They're always the loud ones. They're always the ones, talking their ish. And to have the enemy on the offensive side kind of amping it up means the other side gets going a little bit more too. And so the intensity of practice is just higher than we've seen.
Well, that should be a good thing. Hopefully that carries into training camp into the season so they don't get off to the normal slow start like it has been the past couple of years. But sticking on the defensive side of the ball, it seems like a guy that's been on the roster a couple of years now, has been a big special teams guy, has got a little bit of a buzz going during minicamps. How has Khalid Hudson looked during minicamp, and do you think he's going to be able to carry that over into training camp as well?
I mean, we'll see about carrying it over through training camp. He's kind of picking up on the same Week 18 buzz that Sam Howells is taking advantage of. He played pretty well against Dallas at the end of the season last year, and he's getting a lot of reps at linebacker. Certainly, with Jamin Davis out with the knee injury, he's the only linebacker in there that can even bother to run with any of those tight ends. So he's getting a lot of run, especially as the offense is working through mostly passing plays. He's a little bit of a smaller body, and so certainly when guys like Cole Turner are running down the middle of the field with him, you see a noticeable difference. But he has gotten a lot of work out there, and he seems to be quick and fast, and that's something that this defense doesn't really have at the middle linebacker or at the linebacker position. So I expect we're going to see a fair amount of them, especially as we wait for Jamin Davis. And the coaches can say that Jamin's going to be ready by camp in the beginning of the season all they want. We've seen how injuries play out here in DC over the years, and until I see Jamin on the field, I'm not going to be sitting here expecting that we're going to get 100% of Jamin Davis July 27th when training camp opens.
Yeah, and let's go out west to the Wild Wild West to the gunslinger and Sam Howell. Obviously, last season, he coming in as a rookie with OTAs, it was different. And I'm not saying you weren't looking at him in detail last season to be able to point out differences. But have you seen a change or a progression in Sam Howell from last season to these mini camps?
I mean, the biggest difference is kind of the speed with which he's processing the game. And I mean that from the time that he gets in the huddle, gets the play call, gets the line of scrimmage, calls the audibles, calls the protections. He's getting in and out pretty quickly. And one of the great things about Eric Bieniemy is that he holds Sam Howell to the same standard that he does Jacoby Brissett, that he does Jake Fromm and everyone else down the line. He doesn't take it easy on Sam, and he's in his rear end when Sam makes mistakes. Sam threw a pick during one of the mini camp practices and just kind of put his head down, and Bieniemy was all over him. You're the guy that made the mistake. You go track him down. You go make that tackle. And, it's little things like that you really see, Bieniemy's influence and kind of what he expects from him. Sam Howells looked good. I mean, he's exactly what you kind of expect from a young quarterback, kind of a roller coaster. He makes some really, really good throws, and he makes some really, really bad throws. Luckily, for the most part, the bad throws we've seen have gone to the sideline or out the back of the end zone. He hasn't thrown a ton of picks, though the last OTA session or minicamp session, he did throw a couple in the end zone, and you'll see that in tight spaces. But I've liked what I've seen from him so far. When he makes those wow throws, they're really wow throws, and he's a guy that's going to push the ball downfield and give his guys opportunities to make plays. And that's something that we haven't seen from a Washington quarterback. Every offseason I say it. Hopefully we'll get a guy who wants to throw the ball downfield, but even when Kirk Cousins was here, unless the guy was wide open, he wasn't making that deep ball throw. And so hopefully Sam's going to be the guy that steps up and makes a couple of those 50-50 throws and lets, these wide receivers who we're so high on go make plays and do what they do.
And hopefully we can get a quarterback to play 17 games for us for a whole season. That'd be great as well, Mitch.
One step at a time. One step at a time. Yeah, one step at a time. So obviously, talking about Sam Howell, and then a lot of the season success is going to hinge on how he develops and if he actually turned out to be the guy, or I guess a legit NFL quarterback. But I think that 1A, or maybe even more important than that, is the offensive line. I know they're in shorts and just helmets right now, and not really doing any chop blocks and cutting the defensive linemen, but just overall throughout the minicamp, how does the offensive line look? Just because there's a couple new guys that are going to be starting on that line.
Yeah, I got to be honest. You can't really judge too much from minicamp OTAs. You mentioned T-shirts and shorts. As far as blocking, you talked about chop blocks and stuff along those lines. They're barely getting their hands on the defensive line. They're not engaging with them hard. They're not pressing them to the outside. They're not chopping down on the hands to get their hands off. I mean, it's a pretty light matchup when the D-line and O-line are going. And so you may have read a little bit about Chase Young was getting after the quarterback and looked really good. And Chase did. He looked smooth and quick. And, I was impressed with kind of, his athleticism kind of seemed to be back a little bit more. When you look at the offensive line, I think you look more like personality for me. That's what I'm kind of looking at this time of the year. And what I really like is Nick Gates kind of mirrors Eric Bieniemy in his vocalness. He really is a guy who gets, he calls the huddle like we're in 8th grade football. The play ends and Gates gets back there and hand up, huddle, huddle, huddle. It's not something, man. It's not something that we've really seen here. I mean, it's loud. You hear it. And, I love Andrew Wiley is doing a good job of kind of, it's not blocking, but blocking to the end of the play, especially on some of these screens. You see him running 40 yards downfield with, Brian Robinson or Antonio Gibson or whoever it is down there. So, the guys all look healthy, which is not something we see on the offensive line very often. So I think they look pretty good. I think once they get in pads, we'll be able to tell a lot more. And, there's no better defensive line for this O-line to go against than the guys that they're going to. They're going to get the best of the best. And, it can only make them better. So hoping that the health stays through the regular season, and we get to see kind of what the Chris Paul and Sam Cosmi at guard situations look like.
And I'm glad that you didn't go into further detail regarding Chase Young, because that was my next question for you. How did he look in his return? Did you see an impact from him, not only on the field, but off the field as well? Because Chase Young is a leader for these young guys, for the men on this team. They look up to him. What did you see from Chase Young in his return? Were you surprised?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't surprised with it. Personality-wise, he's always been that guy. He's the guy that brings energy to the defense, to the entire team, really. Just like we talked with Eric Bieniemy on offense, right. When those defensive guys start yapping and start getting into it, it only brings up the intensity across the board. And that's one of those things that Chase Young does pretty well. He's a guy who kind of works his way down the defensive line, not just the defensive line, but the linebackers, the DBs, talking with everybody, hanging out. And so, you need that kind of that joyful football. You need some of those guys who aren't always like, Bieniemy's a hardcore yeller and intense as all get out 24/7. And Chase, who's a little bit more of a levity guy, a guy who is kind of keeping everyone engaged and in a good spot. And as far as on the field, he looked good. I mean, again, I keep going back to the shorts and t-shirt thing. He looked explosive. He looked smooth running. He was able to cut back and forth. He was able to cut left and right. In the 11-on-11 drills, he certainly turned the corner on Cornelius Lucas and Charles Leno a couple of times, which just shows kind of the the athleticism and the trust in the knee, which I think is something that, you have to point out. That's the biggest thing. And he did have a pretty bulky brace on, but to me, if that's what makes him feel comfortable that his knee is going to hold up, then so be it. It means nothing having that brace, but it is noteworthy that we're 2 years out almost from that injury, 18 months, 19 months, whatever it is, and he still has kind of that big brace on. But he looked good. I think that as we get to camp, there was no, certainly didn't seem like there was any ill will from the players about missing minicamp or any of that kind of stuff, and so I think they'll be 100% ready to go come training camp.
Yeah, and him moving like that with the brace, seeing him go through that drills, it even shows you, because people will tell you the brace restricts you to a point, and the fact that he was moving that smooth, that was really surprising to me. It was eye opening. Sorry, Hall.
Yeah, maybe it's like a Rip Hamilton thing where he just wants to keep it on just to for like a luck type of thing. But this is not really like a on the field, off the field thing, but it kind of is. Are you pro this team being on a Hard Knocks, or are you kind of just like, whatever?
I think it would be super cool for them to be on Hard Knocks. I don't think the NFL would do that to them with the ownership situation happening. I think that there's certainly, a candidate. Going back almost a decade ago or so, I was interviewing for a job up at HBO Sports, and as I was going through the interview process, they were asking me about how can we get the then Redskins to be on Hard Knocks, so it's certainly something that HBO is interested in, something they've been interested in for years. I ultimately think that a team is going to volunteer for it. The NFL hates forcing a team to do it, because when you force a team to do it, the team limits the access, and they don't want to do it. They don't want the cameras around. So ultimately, the ideal situation is that somebody's going to volunteer to do it. But I think with the ownership situation, I don't think the Commanders would be the pick this year. And honestly, I do think it's a distraction. I think that it's something that, you get certain players who are going to want to be mugging for the camera and around it. And I think that it does, take away, especially from a team that's new together, that's kind of a new nucleus, new coaching staff, new offensive staff. I think that, they need 100% focus, and they need to be able to kind of lock in. And I don't think the Hard Knocks would be the greatest thing. It would be cool as hell for us. We would love it. I think it would be awesome to get, some of that insight. But at the same time, I think that I don't think it would be great for the football team.
Imagine back in the day when you interviewed with Dan Snyder and all them on it. Imagine that circus. That would have been fun. Get the Scott McLuhan days on there. That would have been wild.
I mean, when they asked, I was like, listen, as long as this guy owns a team, there's a very slim chance that that you guys ever get in there with those cameras, because
a lot of shady business going on behind
transparency was never as strong.
Since I'm here late, of course, because traffic. Was there? Did you guys ask about the left guard position? Nope. Okay. Well, Mitch, being an offensive line guru, what do you think ultimately happens at the left guard position?
I appreciate guru. I don't know I'd go that far, but I think it's going to be City Charles' job. Chris Paul is still too raw to step in there, and quite frankly, it's the most nervous single position on the team that I am with. But you hope that Sadiq's able to step up and stay healthy and kind of take that next step in his career. I mean, we talk about this being a big year for Chase Young, as he goes into free agency, potential free agency next year. Sadiq Charles is the same situation. I mean, this is kind of a make or break year for his NFL career, and it'll be up to him to cement his place in the NFL, or to be a career backup or practice squad or whatever, wherever he ends up. So it's a big year for him. As far as physically, he looks good, but it's tough to be super confident that he's going to step up there and be a solid NFL quality guard, as starting NFL quality guard.
Yep, it's a big year for Sadiq Charles and a lot of guys on that offensive line. But Mitch, to wrap this up, I only have a couple more questions for you. This defense last season ranked top 10 in multiple categories. They were top of the line. They added Emmanuel Forbes and Quan Martin. So what does this defense have to do to show that they've improved this season?
Turnovers. Plain and simple, turnovers. They were top 10 in a lot of different categories. They were bottom 5 in total turnovers in the NFL, and that's something that's got to change. It's great to have a dominant defense that limits teams to yards and does well on third down and all those different things. But to make that step from being a dominant defense to a game-changing defense is turnovers, putting the ball in advantageous situations for the offense, making plays, and I think that's why they made the draft picks they did. I mean, Emmanuel Forbes has been all over the field early in camp. He's a guy who seems to be around the ball all the time. He's had a couple of interceptions that we've seen. He's broken up some passes. I will put the caveat that the offense runs kind of the same sets of plays over and over and over again. So the defense generally knows what's coming. And especially when you have young players, they don't always play it the most honest because they're excited to be out there and they want to make plays. I'm not saying that's happening with Emmanuel Forbes, but you have to understand that there's a reality to what we're seeing on the field. And when we talked to Jack Del Rio, he talked about, needing to know what's real versus what's fake. And I think that that's kind of what he's talking about. Sometimes you get, overzealous guys who want to, get talked about in these situations in the media and, make big plays for their teammates. And they're not necessarily playing the plays as they would in a game. And when they're running 11 on 11, they're running little to no running plays. So they're able to just straight drop back into pass coverage. So all things you just got to think about when you hear all these breakdowns about, how good Emmanuel Forbes looks, how quick Quan Martin is, how good, Khaleke Hudson is, all these different guys. They don't have to respect the run. They don't have to step up and stick their head in the middle, of a running back's chest or deal with an offensive lineman pulling around and, blocking them in the next Tuesday. So These are all things you just got to kind of remember as we discuss it. But Emmanuel Forbes does seem like he's the real deal. He's super quick. He's in phase with the receivers as they're running their routes, especially in the red zone. These guys are having trouble getting separation. And those guys are the Terry McLaurins and the Jahan Dotsons of the world, not necessarily, the Kazmir Allens and, the other guys who are further down the roster. So, I'm excited to see what he has. He's certainly created a situation where, there's some buzz around him and folks are excited. And you can count me in as one of those guys who can't wait to see when they put on the chin straps.
Yeah, and one player that you have not talked about, and I'm kind of disappointed, Mitch, is Ricky Stromberg, because it has been talked about. Coach Rivera said that he's more possibly a developmental guy. Sorry for the stutter there. But I'm kind of surprised by that. What was your viewpoint of Ricky Stromberg from the couple days you were there?
As far as the offensive line goes, I hated the draft. I thought I thought they had an opportunity in the second round. I thought Quan Martin was a little bit of a luxury pick, and this team isn't necessarily in a space where they can make luxury picks. I think there were some solid interior O linemen that were available there. I think both Braden Daniels and Ricky Stromberg are developmental players. I don't think they're guys that you're going to see this year. I don't think they might not even be guys you see next year. This might be a little bit closer to the Sadiq Charles situation. I think Ricky Stromberg can be a solid NFL center, but I'd be surprised if Tyler Larson isn't your backup center, especially early on in the season, and maybe Stromberg kind of works into that role. But both those guys are guys that are going to need a fair amount of work, and part of it is Eric Bieniemy's, like we've talked about, an old school coach, and so he's not going to immediately put in a rookie center to take the start reps or the second team reps. He's going to force those guys to earn it. But Ricky Stromberg wasn't getting a whole lot of reps in camp. Braden Daniels was working a little at tackle, but mostly at guard. So, I mean, I hate for Braden Daniels that they're doing that to him already. I hate what they did to Sam Cosmi, working both guard and tackle. I think particularly for young guys when they first come into the league, I want them to kind of delineate what that O-line role is, learn it, command it, master it. And then once you are kind of solid in that role, then you can start kind of working on the secondary things. And, it's different positions and different things. But we talked to Percy Butler, and he was talking about how last year he had to learn 3 different safety positions. And essentially the whole season, he found himself thinking out on the football field way more than reacting. It wasn't until later in the year that, he's hearing a defensive play call and he's thinking about it in terms of corner, and then in terms of safety, and then in terms of nickel, or Buffalo safety, whatever you want to call it. And it takes time to kind of work through what each call means for each position. And I think that's part of the problem that we saw with Sam Cosmi early on the offensive line is he's working through different reads at tackle and at guard. And the fact that he didn't have an opportunity until this season to kind of lock in at guard is something that I'm concerned about. And the same goes for Braden Daniels out there at kind of tackle / guard.
Yeah, and then the last question I have, it looks like the Harris Group has agreed to replace the financing of the $6 billion that they needed. This was reported by Forbes.com about 4 to 5 hours ago. Mitch, have you heard anything like that? And wouldn't that be the last domino to fall before the news?
The deal is done. It's done. D-U-N exclamation point. Done. None of this all this other stuff is legal wrangling back and forth and, setting precedent for future sales and all this different stuff. All this stuff that we shouldn't care about, we shouldn't know about, we shouldn't care about. None of it matters. When the NFL allowed the Harris Group to sign an exclusive deal with Dan Snyder, that was the moment that this deal was happening. And all this other stuff is dotting I's and crossing T's and the little things that need to get done. The NFL is going to get together, I would guess, pretty much a month from today or right around that time. They're going to vote. They're going to agree to the sale to Harris. And by the time we open training camp, there's going to be new owners of the Washington Commanders. I wouldn't get too caught up in all these different legal wranglings and financial shenanigans and all this other stuff that's happening. When they signed an exclusive deal with the NFL, with Dan Snyder, that was the day.
Is it official? Brian Davis is out? I thought he still had a chance.
He's still in his mind.
Yeah. He offered a bunch of railroad bonds. I heard.
Yeah, you can find him in Northwest DC.
Short line,
at 4 in the morning.
Yeah, Reading.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mitch, it's a slow time. I had to mix it up for you a little bit. We had to take it off the football field. I got to get your opinion on it. I can't thank you enough, as always, brother, to start this summer off and this little chill time before we get to training camp at the end of July. Mitch, I can't thank you enough for joining us, brother. I hope you have a good evening.
Hey, they're gonna have those stands at training camp. They're gonna have 2,000 extra seats for folks to watch. Am I gonna see you guys out there?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Forgot the most important part. They're gonna have food trucks.
They had food trucks last year.
They had food trucks in Richmond too.
Yeah, they did. Mitch, it's okay. We're veterans. They're new to this. All right, Mitch. I can't thank you enough, brother. We'll see you at training camp. We'll link up with you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Mitch.
Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with a man, Mr. Mitch Tischler from Monumental Sports. It's always a pleasure.
No recollection of any food trucks ever.
Neither do I.
When Catherine and I went last year to training camp and OTAs, they had like a pizza food truck set up. It was actually a really good thing that they had built out for everybody. It was actually really, really good. Enjoyed it. But I was hoping that Reed was going to go on here early so we could talk about training camp dates because they just released it and they're opening it up to the fans from July 27th through August 19th. So if you haven't already, make sure you go to commanders.com. If you're in the area, if you're not, let's travel. Let's come to training camp. Once in a lifetime opportunity to come see Eric Bieniemy in his first season here in Washington. Come watch it with us here at Commanders training camp. So hopefully we'll be able to link up together, guys. But before we are joined by our next guest, Mr. Michael Reed, thank you for joining us this evening, brother. How you doing?
Hey, man, thank you for having me, Kyle.
You're like famous now, man. You're everybody's favorite, It is what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. That's
speaking of being the favorite, I want to get your guys' answers to this, Hall. This is a question submitted from the Colonel before we are joined by Anthony Armstrong here. His question is, Hall, do you feel our roster is intact, or are we salivating at players who may be cut from other rosters?
Yeah, I mean, they always got I'm guessing and hoping, and more than likely, they always have their eye on other guys on other teams that are possibly getting cut. I'm sure they have their eye on the market, the free agent market right now as well. You just heard Mitch talking about the left guard spot and how Chris Paul is still maybe a little bit ways away. And we've seen Sadiq Charles, but when he gets on the field, it's almost like you blink an eye, he's right back off the field again. So maybe they're looking at that left guard position in free agency, or maybe they're going to take that Charles Leno route where whenever the Bears cut him, they go after him, sign him, and they get a veteran in there. So I would say yes, that they're definitely looking at other teams' rosters and kind of just scoping through the waiver wire and whatnot. But to say they're going to make a move, who knows? Because obviously new ownership comes in, they're going to have to run everything through them. But I would say that more than likely, due to just training camp and the injuries popping up, more than likely you'll see them sign somebody off of another roster.
Yeah, and I would agree. I'm not going to say that they're like jumping ship, so to speak, at the moment with the guard spot, because I do feel like they haven't been in pads. It's kind of putting them in a bad spot going against this defensive line with no pads on. but it's good to put them in that setting and working on pass pro, especially with Sadiq Charles. We've seen that he's very good in the run game, but does need some work in the pass pro. But I do think the roster is so far intact. And I feel like maybe if more injuries happen to the offensive line, knock on wood, hopefully it doesn't happen. But if it did, that they would go down that route. But I feel like they do feel really good about what they have in the building. If they didn't, they would have made a move before. So I do feel like they're in a very, very good spot at the moment. What do you think, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, don't put that evil out there that the offensive line's going to get injured. Come on, Kyle. James, chill. But
I'm just going off history,
I think
man.
I know. Every year you see something like that happen. I mean, it's always somebody that's going to be brought in, some veteran, somebody's going to be cut, somebody's going to get brought in. So, I mean, I'm sure that they're going to make more roster moves. Like you said, I don't think that they've abandoned ship, but it is interesting that I think that they are trying to give Sadiq Charles, Chris Paul, these guys a fair shot at left guard to kind of see what they have there first. Cause I think they'd rather spend a tiny bit of money than signing one of these vets like a Dalton Reisner if he's going to still be available. But hey, man, they might have to do something, but hopefully one of these young guys, I don't know, pops up.
Absolutely. And speaking of popping up, young guys, Mr. Anthony Armstrong is joining us yet again, a familiar guest and co-host of the Believe Commanders podcast. How are you doing on this beautiful Monday evening, brother?
Man, I am good. The weather is awesome down here in the great state of Texas. And I got one little lemon Oreo left that I'm about to savor throughout this appearance on this show.
What was that about? I saw that tweet.
What was it about? I mean, it was just all facts. And
I've never had it before.
They're so good. They're so good.
Man, you better go to the store right now.
Yeah, that'll change your life.
Don't get you
want to
change your life? The show, man.
Yeah, you want to be better
it's
in
ridiculous.
Life? Yeah, get that. Yeah.
I thought I was the majority here. I didn't know I was in
that.
the minority in this.
Yeah,
aspect.
Of course you are, dog.
Man,
you got us three.
There are plenty. Look, there are plenty of like one-off Oreo flavors, and I don't go for all of them. Yeah. But that one right there, yeah, you need to put that one in your life. It's good for your soul. It's good for your soul.
But like,
I'm writing that down.
On that. Oh yeah,
I'm writing that down, Anthony. But before we go through the rest of this podcast with answering fan questions, I have my own questions for you guys. I'm not sure if you have your own for Anthony, but what is more likely to happen this season? Washington to have no 1,000-yard receivers or to have 2 1,000-yard wide receivers?
That is a hell of a question, because I was throwing around the question regarding pass catchers myself. But man, I feel like you could literally flip a coin and you could see how this could be pretty. It could be on the side where it's none. Right. I'm gonna go with the fact that there's gonna be 2. I think it'll be 2. I think Terry's gonna get there. Obviously, I think he's gonna lead the way. And my other one is probably going to be Jahan. I think Jahan will be the other guy that can get past 1,000 just because he has such great run after catch. You know what I mean? Like I feel like you can get him the ball and he'll figure it out, and he'll bomb you at the same time. So he's not just a one-trick pony. It would take a hell of a season to have like 3,000-yard receivers, but with this extra game, you could definitely do it. So, I feel like it's more likely to have 2,000-yard receivers, but there's a probably what would y'all say is the percentage to have 3,000-yard receivers?
Damn.
Ooh.
You want to go first, Hall?
Yeah, I would say man, you got 3,000-yard receivers. This might be a top 10 offense. But I would say let's maybe about like 10-15% just because I mean, it's hard to get 3 guys over 1,000 yards. I know the Bengals with Chase, Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, they either all went over 1,000 or 2 of them did, and Boyd was like really close. So, I mean, if Sam Howells putting up that type of numbers, like similar to Joe Burrow, then it's going to be a hell of a year. But I would say it's a pretty low percentage. But I definitely could see Jahan and Terry going over 1,000 yards, though.
I think you're right, Reed. I think it was the Colts who
think
had
so.
that.
At least they had somebody who was super close.
Wasn't it Dallas Clark, Marvin Harrison, and Reggie Wayne?
Probably.
I think it was that almost undefeated season that they had. But I'll say that the likelihood of them having 3,000-yard receivers in the same year, I would say, is less than 5%. Just purely based on the fact that it being a young quarterback and you want to have the running game be utilized heavily in order to take the weight off of his shoulders. Because if they're throwing that much, that means that they're having to stay in these games. And that's the one cog I have. So I would say less of 5%.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit higher. I like, well, I'm gonna say Mike, but I can't be wrong if I say Mike. I like Mike's prediction of that 15% or so. I think it's in that range because, I mean, really, it's only 58 yards a game. All right, so it's not that many yards when you think about it. If you look at Kansas City's offense without Tyreek Hill, wasn't a whole bunch of just firing that thing down the field. Okay. And I think obviously we know Sam can do that, but that's not going to be what this offense does. I think it's just going to be get the ball out of his hands quickly, get it into his playmaker's hand. And you could easily, I could really see, you may not have the thing is, it'll be a 3,000-yard receivers. It'll be sneaky because you won't have a guy that just has a crazy 150, 170-yard game. Right? Like you'll have Terry get like 95, barely break 100. Jahan has 78, and here comes Curtis with 65 in the tub. And you're like, oh, okay, that's average. And you mentioned Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow had just under 4,500 yards last year.
Damn.
35 touchdowns, 12 picks. I'd love to see that from good old.
We'd all start
Sam
sweating
Howells,
if we saw that.
Man.
See, it would be interesting because it would really depend on how they used Curtis, because they use Curtis Samuel in so many different ways, and with the running game and stuff. And if the tight ends come on, like I would imagine Curtis would be that third 1,000-yard person with 1,000 yards, but is he going to be involved that heavily in the passing game? I mean, who knows? Maybe he has a bunch of big plays. He has a low amount of receptions. I don't know, but it'll be interesting. I mean, they definitely have the potential. If they had a Joe Burrow, somebody like that, I think it would almost be a shoo-in.
Yeah, and Anthony, before we get on to our fan questions, that was a great one. I really do appreciate you asking us that. I want to get your opinion on this time off period, because it's about a month or so for the players to be able to not be at camp. You know, they just went through minicamp and OTAs, but training camp's coming up. So in this time, what is it like for a player? Is it like a battle where like you want to go out and enjoy your time, your vacation, but at the same time you don't want to put yourself out of shape for training camp?
Oh, 100%. You do not want to be out of shape like that. If anything, like I don't care what anybody does over this time period, because it teaches their own. Some folks take that one last family vacation. Some other guys will go straight to their other training facility and just train for this next month. The key is to make sure you show up in shape and still be working on your craft. But you do have to understand you're not going to get another break until, hopefully, mid-February, right? If everything goes, according to the utmost, the ultimate plans, right? What people are really trying to go for, that Lombardi trophy, you're not going to get another break, number one, till week 14 on that bye week. There's a few 10-day breaks here, but you're not going to get a break from football until mid-February. So you enjoy yourself at this time, but you really want to make sure you show up in shape. I'm not sure if this staff does conditioning tests, but I ran one of our, one of the infamous, I guess, conditioning tests in the league. I ran it today, just to kind of, I needed to get a little workout in.
Are you referring to the one that Albert Hainsworth failed?
Oh shoot, which one did he run? Did he run the 300s? Because if it was the 300s, that's a tough one. So if y'all want to run this, go find yourself a football field. You're going to need 50 yards. Okay, so you're going from goal line to the 50 and back. You're going to take 3 trips, all right? 3 trips. When I was in Miami, the receivers and DBs had to get it in about 54, 55 seconds. Linebackers, running backs, tight ends, that crew had to get in about 56 seconds. O-linemen had to get in about 60 seconds. Right. So you run that. You're going to run it 3 times. You get a 2-minute break in between.
Yeah, no way Albert Hainsworth did that. No way. No way. I've seen him on the field lay down because he was lazy. There's no chance he did that. No chance.
It's sneaky. It's sneaky. Yeah. My first league experience, I told you, I didn't know if I told you how I got signed in Miami. We're off track. Well, I got signed in Miami, and I show up, and the trainer's like, "Are you running the conditioning test?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't even know what it is." Because when I was on my workout, I was gassed because I had been flying across the country to show up. So I was jet lagged like hell. So they were like, this dude's not in shape. He's fast as hell, but he ain't in shape. And I ran it and I passed the test. But I remember seeing a couple of linemen, they didn't pass the test. They didn't make it to the team meeting that day. So
damn.
Anyway, all that said, show up in shape, show up ready to go, because when day one hits, it's go time. Like this is not OTAs again. Like, it's ready to go again.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to say, Charles Leno obviously was not there at voluntary minicamp, and we kind of talked about him a little bit not being there. But we saw him last week at mandatory minicamp, and he looks jacked. He looks really good, in shape, and ready for the season. So I'm glad that he did take time off, because to your point, at him at left tackle, he's going to be on an island this year playing for 17 weeks, and his first break is going to be in week 14, so it makes sense.
Yeah. And Anthony, you as a former wide receiver, what is the difference going from somebody like Taylor Heineke, who's not known for his arm strength, to somebody like Sam Howell, who's known as having just a howitzer for an arm?
Man, it's interesting that you say that. Every quarterback is slightly different, and I think that you can overcome the lack of arm strength for Heineke with timing. Right. You have to anticipate. He has to be able to see it happening before it happens, right? You're going to throw that deep dig at 22 yards or so, about 2 yards inside the numbers. That's where your target is. You make your drop, you throw it regardless, and then eventually Terry shows up and it looks beautiful. Well, guys that have bigger arms, they tend to wait a little bit longer because they have the arm strength to make up for it. And I was reading an article today about Logan Thomas talking about Sam Howell. He says he throws a very catchable football. So having a howitzer is one thing, but making the ball catchable is a completely different thing. Yeah. And if you have a catchable football, he had a howitzer, but that doesn't do you too
Rex
good
Grossman
if it's not very catchable.
Beck.
Right.
Yeah. Like Rex Grossman.
Didn't you play with him and John Beck? Right.
Say again?
Did you play with him and John Beck?
Yeah.
So and they were two complete opposite ends of the spectrum too, right?
Yeah. Rex wasn't necessarily known for his arm strength, but Rex had cojones. He was going to throw that thing if he felt like it. And number two, he had a lot of timing, and he just had feel. I remember a time in practice, I had to run like kind of a middle read, and it was in the cover two where London Fletcher, not Logan Thomas. Oh, get my errors correct. London Fletcher was at linebacker. He was trying to drop back into that Tampa 2, and Rex was at quarterback. He literally took like 2 or 3 steps and just lobbed it out there about 20, 25 yards. And I come off the line, I see it, so I just ran up underneath it, and I ran off for like a 70-yard touchdown in practice. So, Rex had a good feel about him. He's a baller. And hearing and seeing Logan talk about it, Logan Thomas say he's a baller and he's able to just kind of adjust on the fly. I like that. I think that lends more to being Rex Grossman. I know people are going to say, "Oh, well, he threw all these picks."
No.
Look, here's the deal. I want a Rex Grossman moxie, but the way that Eric Bieniemy is holding everybody to a high standard, I don't expect to see those type of interceptions. Does that make sense? Right. I don't expect to see that type of bad decision making, but knowing the guy throws a catchable pass, that means everybody's going to be successful. Like he can throw it to a running back, and he's going to be able to catch it, turn upfield, and you don't have to worry about somebody fighting the ball.
Absolutely. Right. It's really good to hear that because coming out of college, one thing I was worried about with Sam Howell was his touch and his passes. The arm strength was there, but sometimes those guys with the bigger arms kind of have a hard time being able to put the ball in an accurate, good spot for a wide receiver to catch it. So the fact that he has already gotten better in that aspect, and Logan Thomas is telling you that, whew, boy. But our first fan question submitted, Anthony, is from Scott Hartley in the UK. Oi! Thank you, Scott. He asks, who has the biggest step this year out of the following? Jamin Davis, Sadiq Charles, Benjamin St-Juste, or Diami Brown?
Man. Jamin Davis, he's not even on the field right now. So that's tough. He's going to have a big showing in training camp and beyond. What's that little Mike? What else we got? Who you said? Sadiq Charles.
Yep. And Diami Brown.
And you said Benjamin St-Juste.
Yes.
I want to lean to saying St-Juste. We had that one hot day where Diami Brown had like 4 catches, but you just haven't seen it much since. It's tough being at best 4. Out of all these receivers, it's tough. And if this is a tight end heavy offense, you're probably not going to see a lot of Diami Brown, unless he flashes and makes some big plays. So I'm going to go with St-Juste. Yet another year in the offense. Check that. Another year in the defense, I should say. You got other players on the field that I think teams are going to kind of want to shy away from. I think you're going to get to a point where if these guys can lock on to receivers and make those throwing, those catches, make them difficult. I don't want them to be wide open. I want to be close to guys. St-Juste has shown the ability to get his hands on footballs. Forbes has. Kendall Fuller can do it. I think these guys are going to be able to make some plays. I would expect St-Juste to get a few picks this year. I think he's going to make a pretty big jump.
And that's a great selection. I am surprised though that I thought that you would go to deep threat in Diami Brown. It seems like your brain was trying to tell you to switch over when you kept saying offense and offense. But for me, I think it is going to be Jamin Davis. I think there is a very good reason why we haven't seen him yet, and him being the sole piece there at the linebacking core that you really feel comfortable with. I think that we're going to see a different Jamin Davis this year. I think Jack Del Rio specifically highlighting saying the dumb plays, just eliminate those, and we'll see a different Jamin. I think that we're going to start seeing that sort of Jamin Davis this season. What do you think, Hall?
Yeah, I feel like the easy answer would be Deami Brown, just because like they got the UNC connection. That's Sam's boy. But like Anthony said, I mean, if you're fourth on the depth chart and you're running 3 receiver sets with a tight end, it's going to be kind of hard to get a guy like Deami in there. And when he is in there, unfortunately, it's kind of like they've only been using him for those kind of like those go routes and those deep crossers and those deep digs. So it's kind of like, unless you're like really focusing on the explosive plays and getting the ball down the field, there's not going to be a lot of opportunity for Deami. So I actually got to agree with my man Anthony. I think it's going to be St. Juice, just because if you go back to last year, if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be one of those guys that gets talked about as one of those like top or upper tier cornerbacks in the league. I mean, look what he did against Justin Jefferson last year.
Yep.
Yes, JJ got him a couple times, but who does he not get on the football field whenever he's out there? But he was going toe for toe with him, route for route with him. He was sticking with him, and I like his grit. I like how he gets up in the run game. He's physical at the line. He has the good arm length, jam near at the line of scrimmage as well. So I just feel like if he can stay healthy and get away from the concussions and stay on the field, then I think St. Juice will definitely be one of those guys where you say, this is what we've been waiting for right here.
Yeah, I always go back to that clip I took of him last season going against Alan Lazard. The ball didn't go his way, but he perfectly mirrors Alan Lazard in his route. And it was like a 3-step route that he was going on the outside, and Benjamin just mirrored it, kind of showing you what he can do for us. We just need the consistency. I love that pick from you guys. Now let's move on to our next question. This is from the Discord chat server. Reed, I'm going to go to you first. From our guy, Tim Towner. There seems to be a surprise cut every year at the end of training camp. Who's it going to be this year, Reed?
That's tough. Who's it going to be? I almost want to say one of the cornerbacks, just because, I mean, when you're looking at adding Emmanuel Forbes and then Quan Martin, like, who else is going to fit? But, like, they're not going to cut Fuller. They're not going to cut Benjamin St. Juste. That's a very tough one.
That is a tough question.
Yeah. You guys brought him up earlier, but maybe there's a chance somebody like Deami Brown gets cut. Look, I don't think that it'll happen. I know everybody wants him to succeed, but it could just end up being a numbers game. Maybe some other people offer some more in terms of a return man. But yeah, I don't know. That's a very tough question.
Very tough question. I will cheat here, and I'll say not Casimir Allen. I'll say Dax Milne, specifically because Casimir Allen has been talked about being possible return replacement back there. If they're looking for playmaking ability, not that many roster spots, they might go with the playmaker over. And so I think Dax Milne could be one of those surprise cuts. It's not even a surprise at this point, obviously. But what do you think, Anthony?
You know, what's going to determine who gets cut is what happens on special teams. You're getting into those guys that they need to be able to find a way to get on the field on kickoff coverage. Obviously, with this new kickoff return rule, it kind of negates some plays that can happen on that. But returning punts, like watching the preseason, if Casimir Allen has some hellified returns, you can write it in Sharpie. He's going to be on this team, right? And if I'm Dax Milne, I'm trying to take a kick to the house. Like it may not be in his. He's been programmed in a way. If you
I was
will.
gonna say, I don't think that's in his DNA.
Consistent catcher, right? He's a consistent catcher.
Find the closest sideline and go.
Why do you say that, Hall?
He is a white.
Why do you say it's not his DNA, Hall?
Well, no, you gotta look at now. Watch out now. You gotta look at like, who was a great returner? Less melanated returner. Tim Dwight. He was a great returner. But he could take that thing to the house. You know. So I mean, I like Milne. I knew that when you punted it back there to him, he was gonna catch it. You know, and a lot of times that's all you want, right? Just catch the ball. And then if they can take that thing to the house, now you're like, oh, shoot, maybe we got something here. He catches it and he can take it to the house. Casimir Allen is showing that stuff. So you can almost say he's going to be there. But whoever can make impact on special teams. I mean, I wouldn't say that, you know, moving Deami would be a surprise. I think you may end up having some sort of training camp trade. I think that would be more more likely, where they like some of the young players, they like somebody else, and they were like, man, let's go ahead and move, hypothetically, let's say we move Fuller, right? Because they like what some of the other guys can do. They've got to get Quan Martin in the field. They want to move Forbes outside. Maybe risky going that young at DB. But I mean, they may just be young, hungry dogs, and they don't care who they go up against. So that may be the energy you need in the secondary.
Now, how pissed would Sam Howell be that when he becomes starter, they trade away Diami Brown or something like that? I'd be so pissed.
I think he would gladly trade Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, and Curtis Samuel to be like, all right, Diami, you're fine. Don't see the field.
Yeah, you're right. Now, this next question, Hall, I'm going to go to you first. This is from Tim Towner in Discord. Do all 7 drafted players make the final 53?
Ooh.
It's easy.
Yeah, I'm gonna say yeah, just because they already talked about Stromberg being a developmental guy. Daniels is a developmental guy, so you're gonna keep them around. The defensive end room is kind of thin, so I think Henry makes the squad. I guess the only person you could maybe be like, is a 7th round pick, Johnson. But I think that they see some traits in him. He has a good arm length. I think that he could also be like maybe a developmental guy, maybe like a Shaka Tony type person. So
right.
I would probably say all 7 make the squad.
What do you think, Anthony?
I'm just going back, checking names, making sure. Does practice squad count? I don't think that counts.
Yeah, it does. I would say it does count because you're not getting released. Well, you're being retained.
You tell us, Anthony.
Well,
if you're going to get cut and they tell you that you're on the practice squad, is that a shot to your ego?
I mean, it's not a shot to the ego because you want to be in the building. Let me say this. It sucks to get cut. It sucks to get fired, right? Okay? It's like if somebody says, hey, we're going to fire you, you're going from full-time to part-time. You're like, damn, at least I got a job. But, I'm not on the field, right? So it's a little bit of a difference just, in relation to the position. So if you're including practice squad, I think they're all going to be there. It makes sense. And I'm all for trying to develop guys. I've been in organizations where they just turn and burn people left and right, and that sucks to be around. Now, if you're able to say, hey, this guy's going to be here, we're going to work with you for a couple of years so you can try to get better and improve because we see something in you, then great, yeah. But if you take away practice squad, I'm going to have to say no. I think that there's probably going to be maybe Andre Jones. I don't know. He may be a guy that just happens to find his way on practice squad. I don't think he's going to have to leave Ashburn, but I think I could see them cutting a couple people, then seeing if you got to think Kaz Allen's showing up. He's an undrafted guy. Right. He's gonna have to take somebody. He's gonna take a roster spot. Right, so,
absolutely, and that's what I was saying. Maybe I was saying with Andre Jones, probably special teams. Without a lot of linebackers on this team, obviously you know that those linebackers on the depth chart they get used a lot on special teams, and maybe that's where Jones is able to help out. Now, this next question that was submitted in read from Jeff Miles. He asks, 2 years ago, the top jersey sales went to Chase Young's jersey. A year from now, who will be the top jersey seller on the team? Possible rookies included.
Honestly,
great question.
I hope it is. I hope it ends up being Chase again because I want Chase to just shut everybody up. That's like what I want more than anything. Having Chase turn out to be what he was supposed to be when we took him at number 2, I think would be clutch. But I mean, you got to go with Terry. I mean, I think that Terry's just everybody's favorite. He plays the sexy position right now at wide receiver, and I just think that 1-7 just looks good. The guy gets it.
He does get it. Oh, look, man, I'm not gonna say Caleb Williams because I know that's what you want me to say, Jeff. I'm not saying it because I'm not going to expect that this football team is going to be a position to get Caleb Williams. But I will say, if anybody, it's going to be Sam Howell. It's going to be the quarterback. Just based off what's going on with Eric Bieniemy and what I just see out of Sam Howell, it's just a personal thing. It's not like I'm like sitting here like an expert. I'm just very confident in the way that he is carrying himself, his mannerisms, what's being said about him, what he's saying, how he's doing in these camps. I think that he's learning, and this is what you want out of a young guy. It's a very good situation for him. So for anybody, I think next season, at the start of the season, Sam Howell will be the number 1 selling jersey.
I'm with you on that. I think it's got to be Sam Howell, and for good reason too. He's going to end up he's going to play well, and people are going to get behind him. So Sam Howell would be my one. If I had to pick a rookie, I would love for it to be that 13. I would love for that to make an appearance on the top. So, unfortunately, I don't think it'll be like a Ricky Stromberg or anything. So, shout out to Ricky Stromberg. Hopefully,
sad if it was.
Sell a couple jerseys.
It would be really
got me a guard jersey, baby.
If I had to pick a rookie, Jeff, I would say Quan Martin. I absolutely love this guy. I think he's going to be legit. Obviously, I'm all over Emmanuel Forbes as well, but I just think Quan Martin is a dude.
Yeah, obviously it's a quarterback-driven league. This team has been starving, literally fiending for a quarterback or a franchise quarterback for like 25, 30 years. So
way more than that.
I know. I'm just in most people's like lifetime because they were winning back then. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's quarterback-driven league. If Sam Howell hits and becomes a dude, it's going to be Sam Howell by far. He might even be like, he might even be like top like 15 in the league. If somehow Washington gets a quarterback,
if you're top in Washington, you're gonna be up there in the.
That's what I'm saying. Because there's gonna be people coming out the cracks, out the creases all across the U.S. if Washington actually starts winning again. So
especially with
I just feel like it'll be hell. But
people coming
non-quarterback division, I would go. I'd probably say Cam Curl, especially if he gets the extension. I think that people will flood to the stores to get a Cam Curl jersey.
Brownie points for you, sir. Very well done. This next question in the Discord chat server is from Chris Comerton. Thank you, brother. Anthony, he asks, rumor has it that the Steelers are highly interested in trading for Chase Young. What are your thoughts on that, and what are the chances we trade him to the Steelers before the trade deadline?
Man, y'all are getting in my bag of what I'm going to talk about tomorrow on my show.
It's Chris's fault. It's not mine. I promise.
But it's all good though. It's all good though. I mean, it's something to think about. Like, would Washington trade him to the Steelers before the trade deadline? I think there's a good possibility that that's something that could happen. Okay. Now, is something that's going to happen in the offseason? Probably not. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I think that they're going to give him a chance to kind of showcase himself a little bit, but dang, it sucks to hear that that would be an option, because especially you think back in the past, when guys got traded, they were about to go ball out,
right?
And you put Chase Young on the side of TJ Watt. I think that's ridiculous. Lamar Jackson's not going to be very happy. Joe Burrow's not going to be very happy. They're going to put that new O-line to the test, and I mean that would be a big foundational piece, a cornerstone to trying to build another legacy and a dynasty up there in Pittsburgh. So could it happen? Unfortunately, yes, I think it could.
I do know that Mike Tomlin loves Chase Young too. Like, remember when we beat the Steelers when we went up there and Mike Tomlin was yapping at him? He was like, man, we're never going to pick high enough to get somebody like you. We're never going to pick high enough to get somebody like you. So I would buy into that. I mean, I do think Mike Tomlin really likes him. Yeah, I do like before the trade deadline, possibly. I don't think it'll happen during the offseason. I think Chase's stock is too low right now to get anything fair in return. And honestly, I hope it kind of stays that way up through the season. I hope Chase just starts balling out so people shut up about it. Is it possible? Yes. Will it happen? I don't know. I'm going to give it a 20% chance.
Yeah, what are my thoughts on it? I don't think personally it's going to happen just based on the politics of the situation and weighing and going. But I'll say this: if the Steelers are willing to walk away from 2 first-round picks, then yeah, let's go. Let's kick tires and let's rock. But besides that, it's not even a discussion at this point. I think Chase Young, even though his injury was catastrophic and could derail a career, Chase Young is a very special type of athlete that could come back from that and be a professional for 10 years. That's the kind of body type that he has that could go throughout time with it. I think that the mind of Chase Young developing was more important than his body, to be quite frank. And I think the injury is actually going to be more beneficial to him long term than it is. I know it's kind of crazy to say, but the mental aspect is so important. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't want it to happen. I want Chase Young. He's a 301 boy. He's got the tattoo in his arm. I want him to stay here. I want him to be here to lead us to the promised land, to get us to prosperity. It's hard to get there, but I want a hometown boy there.
Yeah, so someone just asked me this the other day, and I was like, I don't see it happening because if you look at the coaching staff and the front office, they're pretty much in win now mode. So if Chase is out there balling out, doing his thing, come the trade deadline, are they really gonna want to let go of a piece that's gonna maybe possibly continue to help them keep winning and down the playoff stretch and into the playoffs? I would say no. And are they really looking towards like the future? Because technically, like everyone thinks it's a lame duck year. So are they looking towards the future? Or like, hey, let's flip them for some draft picks, even though we might not even get to use those draft picks. So I would say
Fair.
no, but I would say this though: if he's balling out and Montez Sweat is also balling out, you're probably only going to pay one of them. So it would actually be kind of smart to trade a guy like Chase Young, recoup some draft capital or whatever it might be for him, and then you sign Montez Sweat to a long-term deal. And if they're both balling out and the offense is playing well, then the front office and the coaching staff will be able to use those for like draft picks next year or wherever it may be. So I would say I'm not gonna go 50-50, but I can see like a 40% chance of that possibly happening.
I still think that we can sign both of them, even if they do ball out this year.
Salary
They
cap
only
doesn't
have
exist.
one year of legitimate great production. I want to keep the Justice League together, like Coach Greg Curl talked about, right? And that's what I want to keep together here. Of course, Chase can leave on his own fruition if he wants, but I would love to be able to keep them here, and we're going to have the money. We have like at least like $80 million already next season, just sitting there waiting to be spent. Might as well be spent on our hard guys if they are producing like Deron Payne did last year. If Young and Sweat can replicate that, they're going to be in a very good position to win
I
football.
will say
games,
this
man.
though: if Chase is balling out and he's doing his thing, like obviously they can franchise him and he would have like no choice to come back. But if I'm Chase Young, you already didn't pick up my deal. If I'm having a great season, I'm gonna hit the market and get paid anywhere. So
That's why they'd probably franchise him. But
I
you're
know,
right.
that's what I'm saying,
That's a
like-
great counter argument that you have. Last question that we have, it's a funny one, Anthony. This from Yam Sensa in the Discord chat server. Thank you, brother. Why is Adam Rank so rank? What a shithead.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
That's funny.
I don't know that. I don't know what that is.
So Adam Rank is he is an analyst for NFL Network, and he does all these preseason kind of predictions, and he's always crapping on the Commanders. Before every Sunday, he's picking us to lose. He's picking us to go like 3-14 or something like that.
He's
But
super
it's
messy.
yeah, it's just a funny. It's just
You're
a
a Bears
funny thing.
fan also, which is like even the more funnier part because you're worse than us. But
Yeah, he's just I don't know. See, you gotta quit dumping on the team, man. You know that's why. But that's the other thing. You gotta not worry about them folks that are outside the building.
Yeah.
You know that's always the message. That's how the fans should listen to it, man. Tune into pods like this. Tune into mine. Get the the good temperature of the team. Like I said, hell, there's good things going on. Rank is gonna be proven wrong.
Right.
You know, he's not gonna be over there all. He's gonna be like, oh, well, I guess I was wrong. They didn't go 3-14. You damn right.
He's not gonna cry about it a year from now.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like, hey, take that mess with a grain of salt. I just think so. That it's like it's the easy thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, hey, I'm
absolutely.
gonna just dump on them because that's what everybody's always done.
Right.
Like, man, forget you. Get out of here.
Exactly. That's how I've been for the past 4
Get
years. I'm
outta
just
here.
so tired of all of this negativity. But I will say this: like, does Adam Rank have a point? Because more than likely, he's right. What's the chances that Washington goes 3-14? Is it more so that or 14-3? What's more likely to happen, right? Just based on what you see here. But that being said, how we feel about the team is very different than the national people. But that's up to Washington to show them why. To show them why they're wrong. And we can talk all day and be mad about how they're viewed and all the opinions about them, every ranking, every list they're at the bottom of. At some point, you got to make them shut up, and you got to earn yourself up that list. They can only pile on you for so long. At some point, your play has to take over.
I forget
a
who it
fact.
was. It's one of those YouTubers who I follow on Twitter that studies NFL was talking about, like, is the worst team in the NFC East the Commanders or the worst team in the NFC North worse? And I was like, the Commanders are not that bad. We'll hover around 50-50 if that's and that's a low season. That's where we've been for the last 3 years.
And you could compare it to how the Lions were looked at in preseason last year. Even though myself, I disrespected them in preseason, obviously, and we kind of learned throughout this is a legit team. And we kind of saw in Hard Knocks how good that team really was. And maybe that's something that could be replicated this year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
All right,
It all shows on the
Media
tape,
people
though.
suck.
It all shows on the
It
tape. Like, I remember watching one of the games previewing Detroit, and I was like, "Y'all, these guys ain't bad, man. They're
That's
really
what we're-
close."
yeah. I was saying that
They-
last
they
season.
were
I was like, they're
very
really not that
close.
bad. Same with the Jaguars. I was like, they're not that
Yeah.
bad. Like
No, they're
I could
not.
totally see that being a trap game. Luckily, I mean,
Yeah.
beat the Jags NBD playoff team, but
That's us. That's
Jag
us this
went
year.
deep.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about
Ram
it.
does.
That's how we are this year. Everyone's disrespecting us. That's fine. I'm pretty sure every fan says that about their team, that they're disrespected somewhere. I'm sure there's some Cowboys fan who says that. But that being said,
I don't think there's Chiefs fans that are like, we're getting disrespected. This is bullshit.
actually.
There might be.
There actually is, because they talked about
You
how
think
they were going to
Jackson
drop
Mahomes
off
not
last
saying that?
season. Yeah, remember? They said they were going to drop
That's
off.
true.
Yeah, remember?
Yeah.
All right,
Jackson's
everybody.
like, we are.
You got to drum up the hate. You got to drum it up.
Needs
And then he does his
motivation.
little hand
Kyle
dancing.
tried to break down the show and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
we don't let it
Get outta
happen
here.
here. We don't let it happen.
we're having fun,
Dad
guys.
zone now.
All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. You made it this far. You are a champion. Anthony, I can't thank you enough, brother. It's always a pleasure to have you come on here and join us whenever we do have your time. And it was a pleasure, as always, brother. But before we get out of here, would you like to plug your social media handles and also your podcast, The Believe Commanders?
Yeah, check out Believe in Commanders on all those streaming platforms. TuneIn Radio, SiriusXM, Watch Stadium. It pops up over there every now and again too. We have a couple new episodes coming up this week, so be sure to check those out. Hit me up on Twitter as well, Mr. Armstrong 13. Line up some guests down the line too. Maybe see if I can drum up a giveaway or something for y'all.
There you go.
The most
we'll
positive
see
name
what
for a
we can do.
podcast ever, too.
Believe in the Commanders,
Yeah,
man.
you
You gotta
gotta
believe.
believe.
It comes down to it, man. You gotta have a little belief, man. You gotta have a little belief. But we're gonna be all good, man. I appreciate y'all having me as always.
Appreciate you,
Yes,
of course,
sir.
Anthony. All right, everybody. I'm Kyle.
Go get some lemon Oreos. They're the
Yeah,
truth.
I do have to go get
Yeah,
some.
and I'm Anthony Armstrong.
I guess I'm Mike Reed, man.
Yeah,
I'm Mike
you
Reed.
don't want to be this. No.
Yeah. Disappointment. All right, everybody. We'll see you again on Thursday. Have a
Walking
great
embarrassment.
week. Be safe. Enjoy it. We'll see you guys again on Thursday. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.